Was for you the way you work together, because you write lyrics and you write
most of the music,
the music. Has it always been this way? I mean, even before, I mean, in the previous band too?
No, I mean, Craig's always been exclusively the lyric writer, but Luther Puller was a lot more. It was a different process, but it was a lot more of us. It didn't happen as quickly.
Right.
Whereas and I was also on bass in that band too, where guitar being my main instrument, it's something that I write more quickly on, and also in this particular kind of music, this is really what I came up on in terms of like when I first got excited about playing music when I was, even before I was a teenager, with a lot of the older kids in the neighborhood growing up in the U.S. and the Midwest. So for me, it's just what to do seems more obvious, I guess, to me, which is why it's kind of worked out as well as it has.
And is it for you then how come now that, well, have you found your working method now? I mean, with the two of you? Is it still...
The band too.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we just, I think one of the things you do as a band is you start to play towards your strengths. I think we've identified our strengths and we kind of go at them, I mean, I think we figured out what works best and what doesn't, and that way I think you save time. You can write pretty quickly.
Yeah, and Franz now, it was really was a huge part of Boys and Girls in America, because he came in kind of late in the writing process on our last record, Seperation Sunday, and then we did a lot of touring, and I think everybody got very comfortable with finding out what their role was and stuff like that. So Franz and I actually sat down a lot initially when I started to come up with parts, and he and I went over stuff together. And he's, being a really the only classically trained musician in the band, has great input as to what can go where and what's going to sound good, and the relationship between the chorus and the verses and different ways to find melody in some of the songs and stuff like that too. So it's like he and I work well together. Craig and I work well together. Franz and Craig work well together. Bobby and Galen as a rhythm section too have just become this. It's like a boulder rolling down the hill. And I think that we've really kind of started to find our stride as a band and kind of find what like Craig said, we've really found what all of our particular strengths are in the band, and hopefully that'll continue to grow too, because that'll be a lot of fun for us to see where we can take it.
Is there then one song maybe that couldn't have been written on a previous album, or are they all taken to another level because you were saying?
I think that there's songs that couldn't have been written on the, could or couldn't, I don't know, but songs that we wouldn't have. I think Citrus is, which is on the B-side, wouldn't have been written just because I think it's kind of a mellow acoustic song, and there's finger picking. I don't think that's where our heads were at before.
First Night is definitely I think a good example too of like where we kind of stepped out as a whole band of like what we were comfortable doing with the big loud rock riff, but still yet making a song that had a lot of dynamic to it and a lot of that was definitely one of the songs on the record where we maybe wouldn't have approached it the same way in the past.
And do you talk about the lyrics?
No. In fact, I always say it's fun to have people, when we're doing interviews, people ask him about his lyrics, because I never do. So then I get to hear the story without actually having to ask.
So, but how come?
I don't know, because that's kind of Craig's thing, and I don't want to ask him too much, because sometimes I either don't want to know, or I'd rather just find out about. Because being a fan of his, like anybody else, that comes to see our band, is I have my own ideas about what the lyrics mean, and I like to keep it that way.
I think sometimes it's disappointing, even as a fan of other people's lyrics. Sometimes it can be disappointing to find out exactly what the songwriter was thinking, because sometimes it's not as good as what you thought, or not as good as you.